Over the course of the last 20 years or so, the world embraced digital formats fully. For music, we moved from vinyl records to cassettes and ultimately to CDs and right now to digital files and streaming. For photography, the digital sensors replaced films, and ultimately even movie industry moved fully to digital or almost fully in the last years or so. Yet at the same time, the imperfections of the old formats are fashionable again. The vinyl record sales are all-time high, the low-fidelity music genre is popular again, people are embracing the analog film and video formats once more. Brands like Fujifilm rose to their current popularity in much due to their retro looks and also the fact that they offered the in-camera profiles for their popular film stocks. And if you look at the YouTube or TikTok right now, you'll find ton of tutorial movies on how make your footage more cinematic, what is cinematic, and so on. And many applications and editing software offers you functionality to do so as well, usually by providing some color filters or squashing the contrast or making your image more grainy or low fidelity. But does it really look like film? And the obvious answer is, in many cases, no, it's a film imitation. However, if you really want to make your content film-like, then you might be interested in the product that I'm going to review in this video. And this product is the Dehancer Pro. And if you could guess from its name, it doesn't enhance the quality of your digital media, but dehances it in order to imitate the film look as much as possible. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the history of Dehancer as a product and its company, how it works. I will review the way how you can apply it to editing your video content in DaVinci Resolve, as well as to your photo content in Capture One or Lightroom. As well, I'll have a couple of words to say about their mobile applications. And I'll finish with a review of what I liked, what I disliked, and if this is something for you. Let's get started. All right, full disclosure at the start. The Dehancer team reached out to me to perform this review in return for a full license to their plugin. At the same time, they wanted me to have an honest review and they have no editorial control about the content of this video. They will only see it after I upload it to YouTube, just as you would. And it's my intention to review it as honest as possible because honestly, I have not worked with Dehancer before, so I really don't know what I'm going to encounter. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what Dehancer has to offer. In short, Dehancer processes your photo or video media in order to emulate the film look as much as possible. And it emulates it in two ways. First of all, Dehancer has a great, correct replication of the film stocks, whether it's film photo stock, for example, Kodak 200 Gold, or it's a film or movie stock, for example, Kodak Vision 350D. Next to that, Dehancer built specific models for things like grain and halation. Those are sophisticated 3D models in case of a grain emulation, for example, to replicate how exactly a film, a real analog film, would react to being exposed to light in a certain way and producing specific artifacts, for example, grain or halation. On their website, you can read a lot about the history of the Dehancer, about the science that went into emulating film profiles, the computational research that they did, the scan of the real films, and so on. And I'm not going to rehash all that because I think it's quite a fascinating story to check it yourself, but I wanted to highlight some important parts here. The Dehancer team used both photo and video film, real stock of film, for both video and video purposes. They shot it in different conditions, They also process it in different conditions, for example, underexposed, overexposed, and normal. And then they scan the processed negative to get the accurate film curve that you can apply in their tool. So essentially, they tried all the film stocks that you can see in their tool and tried to represent them as faithfully as possible in their emulation. Finally, the film can't be really viewed after it's processed unless it's displayed, or in the words of Dehancer, printed. And the movie stock, for example, can be printed on the film to be shown in the cinema on the projector, and the photo stock can be printed on a photo paper. So Dehancer correctly emulates this aspect of the photo processing as well. They have a selection of the media targets on which you can print your photo or video, and also a dedicated adjustment sliders and checks and balances, for example, the analog range limiter, which does not allow you to print more ink on this virtual paper than it is allowed by the certain media. All right, so what do we have to do if we want to try it out? Let's install it and see how it works. I used the plugin for DaVinci Resolve and for Capture One, and the latter uses the same plugin as the Lightroom, so you can expect the same behavior as you will see later in this video. For both versions of the plugin, you need to download them from the website, then you run the installation process, and then you open your application of choice. For DaVinci Resolve, you need to make sure that Dehancer is selected in Preferences Plugins. If so, then you can add a node to your video and drag the Dehancer plugin onto that node to start dehancing, and we will see shortly how it works in practice. For Capture One or Lightroom, after installing it, you would need to right-click on the photo that you want to dehance, select Edit In, and then choose the Dehancer plugin from the application folder if you're in macOS, or Program Files in case of Windows. Okay, now that we installed it, let's finally do some editing. Right, so now that we have our plugin installed in DaVinci Resolve, let's try to process some videos with it. And this explanation will be a little bit long, and I'll try to make it as short as possible, but if anything, don't hesitate to just click on the timestamps below in the description and jump to the section that you're interested in. So we have our videos in our timeline, and there is a combination of footage that I took with my drone DJI Mini 3 Pro, with my iPhone 15 Pro, and also with a Sony a6700. So let's see how you can apply Dehancer plugin to this video of a cat. For that, you will need to go to your color tab and you add a node, and then we need to find our Dehancer Pro plugin right here, and then we can apply it on the node like this. This is something that is recommended by the Dehancer themselves, so always put the Dehancer in the last node in your chain. In that way, if you do any adjustments in the nodes before that, you can still see how the final product will look. By default, Dehancer enables film compression, no, not film compression, but film expand, print, and film grain adjustments. I will disable them for now so that we can see the image as clear as possible. And as you can see, there is no difference whether the plugin is enabled or not. So a little bit about the color spaces, because this is another thing that is very much detailed in the Dehancer manual, so I recommend you to read it before you start using it. But overall, what you need to do is check what is the color management on your project. So right now the color science for me is selected on DaVinci YRGB, and the timeline color space is selected on 709 scene. I will change it to 709A, and same here for the output color space, because I work on a Mac, so I choose 709A. If you work on a Windows PC, you probably will choose 709, but we'll see the differences in a moment. So with Rec 709, As you can see, the image here is quite flat. This is because this was shot in S-Log format on Sony a6700. And what Dehancer offers us is actually to apply a camera profiles that are created by the Dehancer team themselves. So if I select Sony here, and I select 6700 and S-Log 3 as Gamma 3, this is the configuration of the S-Log footage that I took. You see that it applies the grading by default, and that is the profile that it comes from the plugin itself, not DaVinci Resolve. So this is quite important on how you want to use it. There are other ways how the Dehancer plugin can manage color spaces. So if we go to project settings, and I'll just show another way, and please read the manual if you want to know all the possible ways how the color management can be done together with the Dehancer Pro plugin. But basically you can also select the DaVinci YRGB color managed and then deselect the automatic color management. You can select the HDR DaVinci wide gamut intermediate, and this is a very wide gamut log grading environment, and output color space for me would be 709A. And now you see that the image became very saturated and very much more contrasty. And why is that? Well, that's because now the grading of the log footage is applied twice. First of all, there is a color profile that we selected here. So it's Sony S-Gamut S-Log 3. And this is the transformation that DaVinci Resolve is doing. And then there is also the Dehancer Pro own camera profile, which applies its own transformation. So if we disable this now, then the image goes back to normal, similar to what we saw before with the Dehancer Pro applying their own camera profile to ungraded 709 S-Log file. An important bit of information here. If you are using your DaVinci Resolve in HDR DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, and you will change the input color space here, or it's detected to Rec 709, the image will still not be correct because the input color space that enters the Dehancer Pro plugin is not what it expects. So it doesn't expect here the wide gamut if you are choosing the camera profile processing within the plugin. So as it's said in the instruction, and as you should read in the instruction, you can only use the camera profile in the Dehancer Pro if you have a DaVinci YRGB enabled. If you are in the wide gamut intermediate, you would have to change it to wide gamut intermediate here, and then select your input color space to your S-Log, and then it would process it normally, and then you can do all kind of adjustments after that. But if you want to use your camera profiling in the Dehancer Pro itself, then you need to switch to YRGB in the color management settings in the project settings. So basically you can do it one way or another way, or read about the ACES processing workflow that is detailed in the manual of the Dehancer. For now, let's just ignore this cat video altogether because I want to show you something more interesting. Let's go back to the project settings for the color management and change it to DaVinci YRGB and select the 709 and output color space same as timeline. And let's look at what if we have footage that is entirely 709 and it's not log. So this footage particularly was taken with DJI Mini 3 Pro in D-Cine-like profile. This is a flat profile and it's not log, but it's a bit flatter, so you can still do some grading and try to make it contrasty. So it's a little bit more susceptible to adjustments, but it's also not log. However, with Dehancer, you can also apply a camera profile to it. If we choose a camera and we choose DJI, and this is not DJI Mini 3 Pro, this is Action 2. However, it has a cine-like profile, and as you can see, it applies a certain gradient to it. So if we disable film, expand, and print, and film grade, this is the footage you get. So already looking pretty nice. Okay, so let's start with the Dehancer. The way how those drop downs are organized is representing the ways how you would go through processing the film. So you would first process it in the lab, then you will apply certain modifications to the film itself. At some point you will print it on the media, which could be a film to show it in the cinema, like a projector film. And here we have Kodak 2383 print film to print it on to show it, let's say, in the cinema. And there are also other targets for printing. So in this case, there is a Kodak Enduro glossy paper, which is a photo paper, and there is a linear profile, which does not do any adjustments here. So if you still want to play with this controls in the print section, for this you need to enable it. As you can see, it does some changes to the resulting image, but you don't want to select, for example, a Kodak 2383 print film. As you can see, this is the result. You can just select the linear one. For now, indeed, let's agree that we will select linear, and let's start with our film profile. By default, it starts with Kodak Vision 3 250D. This is one of the film stocks for movies, and 250 stands for the ISO parameter, and then D stands for daylight. So it's the film, movie film that is used for shooting in the daylight, and then T stands for tungsten, and this is used for shooting in the indoor situations with lamps. And we can preview a number of them, and we can also try and do some push-pull processing in the lab, imitating how it will change the coloration and the contrast of the resulting image. But what if we want to use something else? And as you can see, Dehancer Pro allows you to use a lot of other film stock simulations. So let's try to select a nice Fujichrome Provia 100F, and this is a slide film, so it's not a negative, it's a slide, and you will see that the push-pull actually works differently. It imitates the way how the exposure will be pushed or pulled. And by the way, talking about exposure, you still can apply some modifications to the input, so to the source file that you are processing, pulling exposure down, pushing it up, temperature compensation, as you can see as well, tint, defringe, and so on. Now that we are satisfied, let's say that we are satisfied with this Fujichrome Provia, as you can see, it looks a little bit more sunnier and a little bit more vibrant. We can go to the next step, which is Film Developer. We enable this, and this is the process that you can apply virtually to your film. So for example, contrast boost will increase the contrast of the footage. And now you see it's a little bit more contrasty. Gamma correction will apply the gamma correction to the overall gamma, as you can see in the waveform below. Color separation, let me show you what color separation is. But first of all, let me explain to you what color boost is. Color boost is basically saturation. So if you see now, the lighthouse is very saturated, the water to the left is very saturated, and now if we push the color separation down, you will see that it will desaturate some of the lighthouse. I hope you see it. Yeah, if I do it very quickly, you see it very clearly, I hope. So what color separation does, it basically either saturates if you push it right, or desaturates the most saturated areas of the film. So if you want to keep the saturation of the tones in the middle intact, but desaturate the most saturated parts, you will push color separation back. For now, let's just increase the saturation a little bit, make it a bit more interesting. And as you can see now, the footage looks much, much better already. So if I disable the grade, you will see how nice it is. And without the film developer also, yeah, so it's much more contrasty and much more saturated. I think it looks nice. Next tab is film compression, and you probably saw the explanation beforehand. Film compression will compress the tones, all the range of the tones, basically compressing it in the middle. You see it in the histogram in the bottom. The right side is pushed to the middle. So all the highlights, as you can see on the lighthouse, it gets pushed to the middle, representing how the authentic film would look like. And authentic film does not look very contrasty. There are less clipping happening, and overall the tonal contrast is a little bit less. What's interesting about the film compression is you can, of course, modify the impact on how much it compresses it. So let's keep it at the default stage. Also the white point, at what point it will compress the tones. Sorry, let's put back into the waveform. The tonal range of compression as well. So you can try to compress the whole image, and then if we see it in the histogram, it just pushes almost everything to the middle. Next section is expand, and with expand you can play with a white and black point. So as you can see, you can actually expand the black point or the white point, and this is useful for additional control if you want to do it before printing or with printing. So the next section is actually printing, which adds additional limitation. So before that we saw the film compression, and the print section actually has analog range limiter. And basically when printing, you do not have the capacity to print all the ink and display the section of the image as saturated as you would see on the monitor. So there is always some limitation to how bright and saturated an object can be, or how dark and colored it can be. So this, if you can see it on the screen, analog range limiter imitates this based on the profile of your printing target and based on the film stock that you chose earlier. And next to that, there's also color density section here. Here you see that the lighthouse becomes very dense. It doesn't become overly saturated, but the color just becomes more dense. And you can also see it a little bit here on the ground near the shore. So we can keep it at that. We can also try to come up with a look how it would look on Kodak 2383, but we also did not use it from the beginning, so it looks a little bit worse than with linear. And you can, of course, if you select it from the beginning, you can play with it. You can also change the target white of this printing medium, so you can still fix the white balance at this stage. But for now, let's just keep it with linear and go to the next tab. The next tab is the color head, and color head allows you to add additional coloring to the specific sections of your image. So first of all, there is a yellow-blue tint. Sorry, I need to enable it, which is clear what it does. So it actually represents the color head during the printing process. And then you can also add tint to the shadows. So as you can see, either blue or yellow. Midtones, same, highlights, and so on. And there is also the impact, of course, and preserving exposure when applying these colorings. I quite like how it looks right now. Maybe I want, for the highlights, I want to have it a little bit more sunnier, a little bit more yellow. Yeah. With or without, with, very subtle change. And what I just noticed is that the default white balance is off, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just gonna make sure that this area is white on our original image. And maybe now the color head is actually not very needed. Indeed, the color head is not really needed anymore. Okay, so now the image is sunny from the start, and I like it. It's quite a happy image. It can be a beginning of the movie about like a romantic comedy or something. So let's go to the next step, which is film grain. Let's enable it. And I'm not sure if you see it on YouTube. It added quite a bit of film grain. It's quite visible, as you can see. And this is the 35mm ISO 250. And the default amount is 35. And if you will put it down, you will see some of it a little bit anyway, which I don't really like. And I also would like to have some more controls over the grain application. So what I can do, I can click on custom, and you can see there's a lot more controls and toggles and numbers allowing you to modify the amount of grain to your liking. So one of the first things that you see here is the film resolution. And if you put the film resolution all the way down, you will see that let me just zoom in. You will see how the details really get destroyed when the film resolution is all the way to the left. And this is because with the digital format, you have much higher resolution than on the analog, on the film. So if you want to imitate the actual grain on the specific size of the film, so 8mm, which is a very small film, up to 65, which is medium format, also called large format, you kind of also want to compensate by lowering the resolution of the footage itself. But I don't really want to lose any detail. I just want to add grain. So let's see how we can do that. So this is the 65mm 50 ISO, as you saw. I want to maybe increase the amount of grain. I want it to be in the shadows, in the midtones, but I really don't want it to be in the highlights much. And I also want to make the chroma component, so the chromatic component of the noise, less. This is without the grain. This is with the grain. There are probably not much difference if you're watching it on YouTube. I do feel that there is some grain shimmering here in this shore area and here as well. Overall, for this footage, I wouldn't use it, but let's keep it as an example for this demo. Okay, so now after the grain, we're left with halation, bloom, film damage, film breath, gate weave, overscan, vignette, and some of the configuration drop downs here. I don't think I can use this footage efficiently to show you the halation, so I'm going to switch to a different one. To better illustrate what halation can offer you, let's use this evening footage It's a footage from Tokyo Metro, and it was taken with an iPhone. So let's put a Dehancer plugin to the last node. We'll disable again the expand, the print, the film, and the film grain. And I could select the camera as an iPhone here, but I also have a LUT from Apple themselves to convert it to Rec 709, and it's an okay LUT. I just want to use something different for this example, so let's use a LUT here. And maybe, I already get the 709 source in this tab where the Dehancer Pro plugin is, so maybe I also want to just push the gamma a little bit up, right? So let's see, this is the footage, and it looks somewhat nice and smooth. So let's try to make it more cinematic and also make some halation effect. For this one, I will use Kodak Vision 3 200T. It's a tungsten movie stock, but I also like that it gives a little bit more of a yellowish tint here. And then for the print, let's enable it. Let's use the Kodak 2383 print film. And if you will see the difference, it already completely changes the mood. So this is how it looks just with the LUT. And this is how it looks with the 200T Kodak 3 Vision and Kodak 2383 film as a print target. Let's also add some additional tonal contrast so it makes it a little bit more grimy. And then look, this is almost like from a Yakuza video game. All right, so we're good now. Let's go all the way down. Let's not apply a grain. We just applied it in the previous example. So halation, just with a grain, it has a default setting which you can enable, and let me zoom in on those lights. So if you will now take a look at what happens with the lights when I enable it and disable it, you can see how there is a slight halo around the lights. And basically, if you haven't read about what halation is a chemical effect that is happening with the film when there is a highlight that is usually overly exposed or exposed very high. So it's around the light sources usually, which forces the chemical reaction that kind of bleeds the red light around any of the highlight areas, which usually happens around the lamps, lampposts, and things like this. And just like with the grain, we can go to the custom mode, and there will be a lot of different options for you to play with. The easiest option is to just enable the mask mode, and the mask mode will show you the mask where, as you can see, this is where halation happens. So here you can de-amplify it a little bit so it's not as obvious, or amplify it instead, make it more big, add diffusion, add local diffusion. This one actually probably will look horrible. Yeah, it does. So let's just disable it back and just let's amplify it a little bit so you will see the result. So this is with halation. Let's go a little bit back. Without and with. And when done properly, it really adds very nice effect to your footage, especially footage that is done in the evening with a lot of street lights, neon lights, and so on. All right. So with halation explained, let's go over to the bloom. And what bloom does, you probably guessed it already. It's kind of a variant of halation, but just around any light areas of the image. It will add a nice bloomy, soft effect. and if I will amplify it a lot, you will definitely see how it looks. So if you will go to custom settings, again, it has a custom settings, and you will diffuse it a bit more and try to have as much impact as possible with the bloom. You can make it so that it would look as if your lens on your camera was covered in something like Vaseline, or it was just foggy and you had a slight layer of fog on your lens. Again, it can be very creative if you want. You can use it for very different purposes. For now, I don't think it works here. Halation kind of does, but the bloom just doesn't. Next tab is film damage, and film damage is when you want to show that this is a very, very old film and it has a lot of, as you can see, dust on it, which is very big, a lot of hairs, which are also very big, a lot of scratches, and so on. And then it will look like this. So again, for creative effect, for example, to show that something is happening in the past, or there is some archive footage, maybe there's a flashback, you can do it here in the film damage. Okay, next we go into the next step. This is a film breath, and this happens when the frames in the movie are exposed in a different way, and also the different areas of the film itself are exposed differently based on the frame. So one frame can be overly exposed and another frame will be underexposed, and therefore you have a variance in the exposure from one frame to another. So if you can see it here, it jumps up and down, especially around this lamppost. It's very visible. And that is rarely happens right now with the digital cameras, of course, because, well, there is no film involved. But it happened a lot with old movie cameras, and sometimes in an old movies it is very, very noticeable. So it also can be used to add dramatic effect, so not just to illustrate that the footage is old, but also to add emotion to your footage. All right. Next tab is gate weave, and gate weave imitates how much your video projector is misconfigured, so that when you're projecting the movie on the screen, the actual movie will jitter. And if I will just up and down these values here, you will see it. So as you can see, it jitters, and it imitates this effect when the projector in the movie is not configured properly, or the gate weave is, well, not modern enough that it is stable. Overscan gives you the overscan of the footage, usually when the footage is scanned, so the film is scanned, then the image itself of the film is scanned not only with the exposed area, but also with the areas around it. And sometimes it can also be visible, and sometimes it's added for dramatic or creative effects in the movies. And that is the settings here. And there are different, as you can see, there are different types of overscans. There is also the Ultra Panavision. So this is something from Tarantino movies, I would say. Again, something for creative souls out there. I don't think you really need to use it for any of the videos, but it's nice that it's available in the plugin. Let's disable the overscan, and let's disable the gate weave. And actually, for the demonstration of Vignette, let's just go to the Lighthouse video back. So everybody knows what Vignette is. It adds darkness in the corners, as if your lens are not very clear, or you have some other issues. Perhaps there is a lens hood that is not very fitting to the size of the lens. So you can configure the feather, which will be a little bit, yeah, this is a little bit ridiculous, but you can configure a lot of parameters for Vignette here if you want. So that is for the adjustments of the plugin. As I said, there were a lot of tabs. We covered all of them. So I hope you're satisfied with this. I'm definitely satisfied with the results of the plugins on those video samples. And let's cover the last 4 tabs. There is a monitoring tab, which can display you false colors and also give you a clipping indication. There is the output tab that allows you to control the total impact of this node itself, where you enable Dehancer plugin. There is a LUT generator, which can create you a LUT based on the Dehancer Pro settings that you have made in the plugin, except grain, bloom, halation, and vignette effects. And there is additional tab with options where you can select the quality, the license info, check profiles and download new ones, or disable all tools. So this is it for the demo of the Dehancer Pro plugin in DaVinci Resolve. As you can see, this small tab that you applied just to one node in DaVinci Resolve gives you a ton of adjustments, a ton of control over the resulting look of your image. You don't need to add any additional nodes in DaVinci Resolve. Practically, if you're satisfied and you're content with what Dehancer has to offer, you basically only need one extra node and then activate the plugin there. And I must say, for my use cases, which are very minimal, I don't really do a lot of corrections. I don't do much of animations or fusion modifications or anything like this. Dehancer Pro is more than enough in most cases. So that's it for DaVinci Resolve. Let's take a look of what you can do with it in Capture One. Now we're in Capture One. As I said previously, the Dehancer Pro works exactly the same for Capture One or for Lightroom. It's the same actual plugin. So if we right click on our sample image and we click on Edit with Dehancer Lightroom plugin, it is an actual Lightroom plugin. There's also a plugin for Adobe Photoshop, but trust me, the controls and everything else is exactly the same. And they're very, very similar to what you just saw in the DaVinci Resolve one. One of the differences with DaVinci Resolve is that the plugin is applied on one of the nodes, and here the plugin is applied to a copy of an image. So the Dehancer Pro recommends you a TIFF format with the sRGB color space profile. That basically means that you will have to create a TIFF image for a TIFF file for the image you want to process in the plugin, which will take some space. So bear that in mind. Okay, so that's it. Dehancer Photo plugin just opens it in the new window. So we kind of are out of the Capture One interface right now. So let's go a little bit on the menu. On the left, you see the films. On the right, you see on the right to the films, but still on the left in the menu, you see the presets. These are the presets with majority of them done by the Dehancer team themselves. And you can see also that there is some last edits that I did. You can close this tab. You can open up the settings. You can restore last use settings. You can reset all settings to the default, go back in history, go forward in history. And then, of course, if you still looking at the left, then you have the presets that you can filter. You can add a new one, you can save one, you can export it, and then you can also delete the selected presets. To the right, you can show or hide clipping. You can show the histogram in the bottom of the screen. You can zoom in on 100%. I have a 4K screen, so it doesn't really zoom much. This is a 24 megapixel image. And you can deselect And so you deselect and select the modifications that you are doing to actually compare it with the original. And then on the right part of the screen, you see a very familiar, if you just come in from the previous section with DaVinci Resolve, you just see very familiar settings for the source, adjustments for the film developer, film compression, print, and so on. And then, of course, there is no film stock here because the film stock is selected on the left. The film stock is almost exactly the same as with the DaVinci Resolve plugin. So let's select something very nice. And the image itself is already pretty good. So as you can see, Anna is sitting near a nice illuminated window. The light is coming to her from the right. There are some patches of light and shadows which make the photo much more interesting than without them. There is a nice orange sofa. So in general, it's already a very nice picture. Let's make it a bit more contrasty and colorful. For that, we will select the Kodachrome experimental stock. And I need to activate it here, of course. So we selected it here. And then we can go to the right and try and process the stock. So for example, I already see that it makes it a little bit darker than I wanted to. But I also don't want to overexpose the lights in the image. So let's say the source, we keep it at this. So let's go to Film Developer and let's make it less contrasty. Yeah, so there are a little bit more detail that is visible in her hair. And then we can try to make the color boost, but the image is already quite colorful. Let's keep it at 26, I would say. Yeah. Okay, next thing is film compression, and as you can see, it compresses the lights in a quite a nice way. So it still doesn't look as if it's very flat, the image, but the almost overly exposed areas are now much more balanced. We will not do anything with the expand, but the functionality is pretty much the same as in the DaVinci Resolve plugin. Let's go to the print tab. And there is actually a new print target compared to the video one. And this is a Fujifilm 3513. And as you can see, it really gives you a different feel. You can still adjust the target white a little bit, but I also don't really like this look. So let's see Kodak 2383 print. Looks a little bit better. Let's compare it without. So more contrast. Let's compare it with the default picture. And as you can see, the difference is quite dramatic. So I don't really like the pink undertones here, but I also want to keep it as white as possible. Let's keep it at that. And we can also try to increase the color density. So that's what we arrive at this stage. I don't think I want to do anything with the color head, and maybe I want to add a little bit of film grain. And I don't want to decrease the resolution, but I also don't want it to be super grainy because it really doesn't really fit this image. So I'll make the grain smaller and I'll decrease its amount. I think this is much better. And I will also try to make it as less as possible in the highlights. And I will make it a bit more monochromatic. So if you look at the impact of the grain on this image, it actually makes it a bit more interesting. Maybe I should remove a bit more in the midtones so that the skin is a bit more smooth. It's very subtle difference, But I want you to look at this elbow of Anna over here. So there is a white shirt on the elbow, and without the grain, it looks very smooth, which is okay. But with grain, it actually adds additional texture, which is a fake texture, of course. This texture didn't exist when I took the picture, but it just adds a little bit more reality to the picture, albeit in a fake way. So that's it with the film grain. I don't think halation will do any good to this image. Neither will do bloom, fill damage, overscan, or vignette. So let's just take a final look at it. Before and after. And you obviously can say that before is a better image, and I must say in some way it is. But if we really wanted to go for this type of look, then, well, we did a good job. So let's go to another image, and I'll demo you the halation in the photo plugin as well. All right, so let's select this image, and this is an image I took in Osaka at night. Again, we'll make a TIFF copy of this image. Okay, so we now have this evening image from Osaka, and let's just select a nice stock, and we'll apply halation because you already know the other settings and adjustments that you can make in Dehancer. Oh, I need to select the film profile, of course. Let's select Fujichrome Provia 100F. Okay, and if we select the halation, you will see the result immediately. And again, the way how it works is very similar to the way how it worked in the DaVinci Resolve plugin. So you also have mask mode. You can adjust the mask. You can make it more smooth, for example, as well. And you can make it less obvious. So this is with halation, and this is without. Oh, sorry. This is without, with, without, with. Maybe let's amplify it a bit more. Without and with. And so this is the effect. You can use it very effectively. You can also see that here it produces results that are very, you can't really expect them here. On this poster over here, usually halation happens around the lamps, around the light sources. It would not happen, I assume, at the paper poster. And I think in this particular situation, the effect is quite pleasant to look at. So there is some additional orangey coloration, but this is not how halation should work. So keep that in mind when you apply it. Maybe you want to have some additional masking after that on the resulting image. But this is how it works in this situation. Bloom works exactly the same, film damage as well. As you can see, there is some additional film damage here. You can also add the overscan and vignette, of course. So in general, it's the same things that you can do in DaVinci Resolve plugin, but now it's a separate plugin for the Capture One or Lightroom, and you have to make an additional TIFF file to apply it. So that's it, folks. That's it for the photo plugin. See you in a second. Okay, so now you just saw how Dehancer works for video and photo editing with an example of DaVinci Resolve and Capture One. At the same time, Dehancer has a mobile app. So I have one installed on my iPhone 15 Pro. It also has an iPad application, but unfortunately my iPad is a little bit old, so the requirements does not allow to run a Dehancer on it, which is a bit of a shame. However, the iPhone version of Dehancer also works very well. It replicates most of the functionality of the plugins for DaVinci Resolve or Lightroom, basically it's the same workflow for both video and photo that you can apply on your mobile phone, with some limitations. I only managed to use the photos and videos that were directly in my iPhone library. So for example, if I would want to use something like Blackmagic Cam app and shoot in log format, I would not be able to open it in this Dehancer mobile application. However, apart from that, you get all the features, or I would say most of the features that you can find on the desktop versions of the Dehancer. So all the film stocks, the print target, color density, color hat, grain of course, and it's all available in the mobile application. From the negative side, I must say that the UI on the application is quite small. It's still entirely workable, but it's a little bit cumbersome to navigate because it's just very dense. And final negative point is the performance. On iPhone 15 Pro, a small 4K footage of my dog took about 10 minutes to export, whereas on my desktop it of course takes much faster. This is entirely understandable from the point of if you would try to compare the computational power of two devices. However, it's something to consider if you want to use the mobile apps to export long or edit long videos. In the end, I actually might say that the iOS version of Dehancer is the easiest version to try because it has most of the features that the desktop versions has to offer. At the same time, it's much more straightforward to use than, for example, DaVinci Resolve one, and it's also the cheapest one from the bunch. So speaking about the cheapest and the price, actually, I might want to steer onto the things that I didn't really like about the experience. Clearly, Dehancer has done a lot of work and continues to put a lot of effort into perfecting their emulation software. And judging from the list of projects and users on their website, is clearly a recognized and loved software to do film emulation. At the same time, if you look at the price, it is quite expensive. So let's say DaVinci Resolve, the studio version, right now costs 275 euros. And DaVinci Resolve Studio is a full package with audio, color, video, animation, transformation, and all kind of things to use to work on your video projects. Compare it with the Dehancer, which is a film emulation plugin. The full unlimited license for the Dehancer Pro would be $449 right now. So it's almost twice as expensive as the DaVinci Resolve Studio. And now I understand that it's a different types of businesses and different types of software. DaVinci Resolve is made by Blackmagic. They produce cameras, they produce all kind of businesses and services. So I understand that the price for their product would not indicate how much money they actually earn as a company, and whether DaVinci Resolve Studio is their main cash cow. Obviously not. However, if you just look at it from the consumer perspective, the price of the Dehancer Pro, the full license, the lifetime version of it, seems like it's on the higher side for hobbyists or semi-professionals. And in addition to this, and just as an FYI, the price for the photo plugin is $199 for a lifetime option, and obviously Dehancer Pro is also available as a subscription for all their plugins. But even as a subscription, it's a little bit more expensive than the, let's say, subscription options for Adobe suites or Capture One suite. And as a small-time YouTuber, I think this is the biggest issue that I have with it. I really loved what Dehancer Pro has to offer, but I definitely see why it's really a tool for professional studios and professional color graders, because for them, perhaps working with these capabilities that Dehancer Pro offers allows them to make work faster, make it more accurately, and then basically save money, and therefore, and as I said earlier, actually, that's why I think that the iOS or mobile version of Dehancer is a great thing to try. It's only $9.99 for a month, subscription-wise, and it basically has all the capabilities and power as the desktop version. Of course, it's not as versatile, and as I said, is not as performant as the desktop version. But if you just want to try it, and if you don't want to be attached to it in any way, then I think it's a really good option to have a very budget-friendly and quick way to try Dehancer. Finally, if you have decided to try Dehancer after my review, you can use my promo code TechFi on the checkout of the Dehancer shop, and you will get a 10% discount. Talking about functionality, I'm amazed at the depth and capabilities that Dehancer Pro has to offer in terms of color control and film emulation. To me, it feels much more intuitive to use in DaVinci Resolve for color control than to use the natural DaVinci Resolve tools, and that's of course tells a little bit about myself. However, it resembles much more the tools like Lightroom and Capture One with the sliders and with the different layers of the processing workflow, that it really makes it much easier for me to understand what I want, what I have, and apply it very quickly to the footage. So for the video, I definitely see myself using it much more. And as for the photo editing, my biggest gripe with the Dehancer Pro is the fact that if I want to use the Lightroom plugin, I would need to create a separate TIFF file to apply my edits, which will make an impact on the available space on my hard drive. And for that, I would probably limit the use of Dehancer Pro for specific projects where I cannot achieve the same results within the Capture One itself. So on this note, I would like to end my review of the Dehancer Pro. I hope you enjoyed it. I really liked the plugin myself. Thank you, Dehancer, so much for allowing me to make a review of your product. And as for the viewers, well, if you would like to give it a try, don't forget that you can use a promo code TechFi. I will also put it in the description below to get a 10% discount on the checkout in the Dehancer Pro shop. So, thank you very much for viewing, and I will see you in the next video.